What's up everybody, hope all is well. Overwatch has changed a lot in 6 years, but do you really remember the ways in which it has? Odds are probably not because of something called memory bias. Empirical evidence has proven that over time we all bend and shape memories to fit our own desired narrative. Sometimes they're enhanced, other times impaired, but it's unavoidable and readily apparent in the world of video games due to the complexity of systems, frequency of change, and timescales involved. So I went through all 6+ years of patch notes and the result is this video, a fact-driven, honest analysis of the support role. The inception of this video is actually a selfish one. I stumbled across a forum thread claiming my favorite hero, Ana, hasn't received any nerfs, while the rest of the role has. And to be clear, the way it's written makes it seem this person thinks Ana legitimately hasn't been nerfed, ever, not once. At first I laughed it off, but the obvious attempt to gaslight the situation got me thinking and I decided to analyze the patch notes. I wanted to see what heroes were nerfed or buffed and when, what changed, who had it the worst and who had it the best. Does the narrative I tell myself comport with the reality of it? You know I love a good thought experiment, and in that instant, I was off. I think a lot of good can come of this video. Obviously, it can help set the record straight and better inform your own opinions on Overwatch, but beyond that, big picture and another life lesson from this aging gamer, we can all benefit from a reminder to be critical thinkers. If you want people to take you seriously, base your arguments on an objective, fact-based reality. That goes for everything from your hot gaming takes to why you deserve a promotion at work. Going in, here's a story I was telling myself. Let's see if it's right at the end. It feels to me like the last few years Blizz has dialed the role back some, specifically in healing output. Not much, but there have been minor nerfs that, when aggregated across the whole, add up to a notable percentage reduction. Offensive outputs remained roughly the same, as has our ability to defend ourselves. Specifically, Brig and Mercy are the two outliers and have probably received twice as many nerfs as the rest, owing primarily to the fact they've been reworked so much. Everyone else, Ana, Bap, Lucio, Moira, and Zen, have been the steady eddies, with a few adjustments here and there that have evened out over time. So does that check out, or am I way off? Hit pause now if you want to consider your own narrative, otherwise let's get into it. I went through a good 100+ patch notes and documented every change. Here it is, broken out by hero, date, and color-coded based on whether it's a nerf or buff. Then I threw it all in Power BI to make some quick charts. It was a lot of monotonous work, so I reserved the right to have a mistake or two in there, and I didn't include any quality of life changes, but it's close. Let's start at the 10,000 foot level. Total count of buffs and nerfs by hero. Green are buffs, red nerfs, and purple is the net change. Not a lot of context here as no weights applied to each change, but it does provide some. Already my personal narrative's a bit shaky. Mercy and Brig have had the most change as I suspected, but Ana's not far behind and the only other hero to be net negative in terms of change count. That is to say, more nerfs than buffs. Baptiste and Moira are net neutral, but despite being latter additions have received a significant number of changes. And look at that, Lucio and Zen are net positive. Didn't really expect any of that, especially Lucio. I always considered him the tracer of the support role, sort of the baseline of what they balanced everything else around. Moving on, I wanted to show this chart quick. It's the same information as the previous total change count by hero, but displayed as a percent of total. Thought it was worthwhile to point out that 71% of all Brig changes have been nerfs. That's wild. On one hand, it shows just how overpowered or out of place she was on release. On the other hand, it does make me feel bad for people who like playing her. Even if you acknowledge she's OP, it must suck to have a hero you enjoy getting chipped away at patch after patch. This chart shows all heroes combined over time. What sticks out to me is how major nerf patches seem to intensify over time. 4 in 2016, 6 in 2017, 7 in 2019, and 8 in 2020. This suggests to me some sort of periodic holistic review of the role. Every year or so they make some major adjustments. This is the same data with net change included that's a little easier to visually extrapolate from. After seeing this, I had a hunch my personal narrative was about to take another hit. So I made this chart, net change by month. What's important is the downward sloping dotted line in the middle. This is a calculated trend line, clearly showing the balance of nerfs to buffs have shifted over time. Even if we remove the very first patch back in July of 2016, while not as pronounced, the trend continues. Now this may or may not fit my narrative, it's impossible to say without additional context. This is just a count and those recent nerfs could be minor. Alternatively, the opposite could be true. So we've taken this about as far as we can in this section. Interesting stuff, good info to know, helpful to dispel a few myths, but now we need to dig into each hero specifically. Alright, so let's do this in alphabetical order. Ana changes over time. Same legend, green buffs, red nerfs, purple net change. Recent nerfs have outnumbered buffs 2.5 to 1. Let's break her down into 4 pieces: rifle, grenade, sleep, and ult. From launch to present, her rifle fires 20% faster but does 13% less damage, and it holds 50% more ammo, 4 rounds, but that's a 20% reduction from its all-time high. Her grenade radius increased 1 meter, but healing boost applied to teammates was cut in half, and its duration reduced 20% from 5 to 4. Sleep, only one change I could find, and that was a reduction in its duration from 6 to 5. And finally, her ult had a lot of changes. 6, I believe, though, mostly nerfs. Ult cost increased, movement buff removed, incurred an activation delay, and can now be interrupted. It did, however, receive a nice buff in that it instantly heals a target for 250, down from a high of 300. Her most understated buff likely being her grenade and bullets now pass through full health allies, but I view that more as fixing an oversight than a buff. So what's that tell us? Objectively, from a purely numbers standpoint, she's probably worse off now than at launch. Her gun power has moved laterally, her sleep's worse, though arguably not by much, grenade notably less powerful, and her ult even more so. But that's just numbers in a vacuum. You need to take the entire game into consideration when deciding if she's more or less powerful than launch. It's possible other changes in the game could actually make these nerfs a net buff. Like as DPS creep became a reality, maybe instantly healing nanoed targets is worth more than losing its movement buff. So I think the answer here, and for every hero, is going to be a subjective one. It's up to you, but I'd like to reiterate the importance of being a critical thinker. In his short time, Baptiste has gone through a lot of change, 26 to be exact, but ultimately breaking even. Most buffs have been minor adjustments to his gun that over time add up to substantial gains with better range and accuracy. Most nerfs have been to his immortality field, which is a pretty polarizing ability. Its duration reduced, hit points reduced, player hit point threshold reduced, and cooldown increased all the way to 25 seconds. Personally, I'm gonna say Bap's better off. His gun's better, mobility's better, healing better, and all he had to trade was some lamp utility. Do we even need to talk about Brig? Yeah, she's worse off, but not like they nerfed her into oblivion worse off. She's just serviceable now. We all know she's been hit the hardest, and for good reason. A big part of receiving so many nerfs, though, are her minor reworks. They spent a solid 3 months buffing and nerfing stats around her health pack after removing Overheal. It's just further evidence they had no idea what they were getting into adding Brig, but I don't say that in a mean way. They were just, trying an idea. Personally, I think no matter what, a brawly, melee-based support hero will always have trouble fitting in. They need designed in such a way as to be durable in a team fight, but that makes them OP when matched up against just a single 200 hit point softie. Surprisingly, Lucio has received the most buffs and is the highest net positive in terms of total change. Similar to Baptiste, it appears like Blizz focused in on Lucio's team speed boost as being the biggest problem. His gun is unchanged except for a small buff to the projectile velocity. Most of his buffs came in the form of personal mobility and AoE healing, but most of his nerfs, and the biggest ones, reduced the amount of speed boost he could give teammates. Not so ironically, some of those were partially rolled back between March and October of 2019. Anyone else remember what was going on around that time? Goats, roll Q maybe? Final verdict, he's better. Team speed boost is a bit worse, but still good enough to dive with. I really wish I had more playtime on Mercy so I could talk to all she's been through, but from the outside, it looks rough. Second most in terms of total change and nerfs, second only to Brig. The big changes started in 2017 when Mass Res was moved from an ultimate to an ability, reduced to just one target, within 5 meters, and she was no longer invulnerable while doing so. As an ultimate, it was replaced by a Valkyrie. Now my understanding on this is a bit mixed, that I think most Mercy mains were happy to walk away from Mass Res, and Valkyrie was considered pretty decent in the beginning, but a few months later, in January of 2018, its utility was nerfed and became sorta meh. Is that right? If not, let me know. But more so than the changes themselves is just the sheer quantity. Like Brig, it's gotta be frustrating to see your main change so often. Even if they're small, it's still a change, and sometimes even the smallest ones have a big impact on how the hero's played. Looking back over the notes, she's had pretty much every aspect adjusted multiple times. Bottom line for me, with so many fundamental changes to her and having so little game time, I can't say either way if Mercy now is better or worse than launch. I'm curious to hear from the Mercy players. And finally, Moira and Zen. I'm lumping these two together because there's nothing interesting here. Neither's had fundamental changes, just various balance tweaks. Most exciting thing for Moira has probably been the ability to jump higher during fade. Yay, whatever. And for Zen, literally nothing exciting or new. Oh wait, we did get a kick, but not until Overwatch 2. So, final thoughts. Did my narrative match reality? For the most part, no. I thought heals per second would be worse, but I found enough evidence to the contrary to make me think it's a toss-up. Some heroes a few HPS worse, some a few better. To the people blaming heal creep for some of the game's problems, you're gonna have to show me where, because I'm just not seeing it. Rather, what I think is going on with regards to that perception is twofold. First, I think some players inadvertently lump support abilities in with healing, and their effects make it feel like healing itself is too much. I'm talking about things like invulnerability field and Ana's grenade, but take solace in the fact those are things Blizz has been and likely will continue to nerf until they're happy. And second, like every aspect of the game, the baseline average for heals per second has risen as players just got better. Better positioning, ability use, and just plain situational awareness of even average veteran players can yield impressive results, but that holds true for everyone, so its effects are relative and thus moot. For Ana specifically, I think she's the type of hero the support role needs more of, but that's just me. I will concede 100% healing debuff on enemies with grenade doesn't have its place anymore in 5v5, and I'd be fine with that tuned down, but what makes Ana stand out for me is that her kit enables me to make plays and challenges me in doing so. She can contribute to virtually every scenario, and I think that's what a true support player wants. I don't want to kill everything, I don't want a heal bot, and I don't want a brain dead mechanically easy mode hero to play. I want to enable my team to do awesome things, and I want some difficult and creative gameplay in doing so that allows for impact and skill expression. So in closing, you know what's most important here? None of this matters. In a month, we'll all be playing essentially a different game. And with that, I'm done. I appreciate you taking the time. Take care of one another, and I will see you soon.
Hey.
Hello there. Get back in the fight.
Damn it.
You're covered.